For some reason, we find comfort in asking the dumbest questions. We are officially at a low point in society, and I'm not sure if we can recover. What is going wrong in today's society where we have to ask if being fat is a choice? And what do we mean by choice? Do we mean that once a person is obese, they have the freedom to stay that way or lose the weight? Or do we mean it in a way that allows someone to avoid any and all accountability in terms of their own weight? That's likely the case. Well, Jubilee's episode of The Middle Ground attempts to answer this question by having a group of individuals discuss the nuances of body size and the factors that go into it. So, in the comments, let me know if you think being fat is a choice, and on your way down there, please leave a like on the video as it helps with its discovery in the algorithm, and subscribe for more reactions. Let's get into it.
Being fat or skinny is a choice. Agreeers?
It's 100% a choice. Just letting y'all know my stance early.
Of course, not every factor is purely choice. I don't think that every factor is, but I do think a majority of it is. And in most cases, for most people, being skinny or being fat is about willpower. It's about the environment you grow up in, sure, but who you choose to associate with, what sort of things you choose to listen to, who you choose to kind of have as your friends around you and support you. All of those things are choices that you can make that will lead you closer towards being one or the other.
I know what I do with my body. I know what I put into it day in and day out. I choose not to eat some days. I choose, how I want to look.
Well, that's a bit
and I don't
fucking
fault
extreme.
anyone for how they want to look or how they want to be, but I think it's a choice at the end of the day. I'm very, always wish-washy on how I want to be presented and if I want to gain weight or not. But the only person that's going to gain the weight at the end of the day is me and me myself.
For me, it's calories in, calories out. Go to the gym, you'll get buff. Don't go to the gym, you won't get buff. I understand that there's genetics that could cause you to want to eat more, but even with the genetics that cause you to want to eat more, the same solution is calories in, calories out.
I think the whole choice is, always determined on who they are. And it's not going to just be a thing done overnight.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of, I think it's like breaking the barrier and breaking a lot of things, not only your body, but also breaking your mental state.
Sure.
And again, that depends on who you are and what you want to go through.
Disagreeers?
We pause it right here for just 1 second. Isn't it amazing how the majority of the room doesn't believe that being fat is a choice? And the majority of people who don't believe that are fat. I just wanted to point that out.
I felt like as a toddler, I always viewed myself as big. I grew up in a very poor home, so where my mom couldn't provide the meals that she could healthily. So when we would get free meals, even then, it would be canned food, and it would be very much food that's not as edible. It was food for us, yes, but then I felt like once it reached a point where I was old enough to try to make my own choices, I made all of the wrong choices. I wasn't eating, and I was only eating grapes and lettuce, and that was mainly because I was in a sport, and that sport just worked me out so hard. And it was to the point where I just was scared to eat. I didn't like it. I would only drink water.
When you were eating grapes and...
Wait a minute. Everything she just described post-childhood was a choice. She chose to eat grapes and salads. She chose to join a sport in which she couldn't handle the workouts. Everything that she said indicates that being fat is a personal choice and that she didn't want to engage with the process of eating and being healthier. So I'm not quite sure why she didn't sit down in the first place.
And lettuce, were you thin?
I was the thinnest I could be.
Were you still big though?
I was still big, but that was the skinniest I've ever been, and that's coming from somebody who was only eating somewhat salads that are just fruit and lettuce and water and maybe ice right before a practice.
Do you think that right now you would not be capable of becoming a thin woman if
I
you wanted to?
possibly would be capable of becoming a thin woman, but since I was young, I was supposed to get blood tested probably when I was very, very young, and I never did. And they had mentioned that it could have been because of my weight and how that connects with my thyroid. I never made the connection, and I never had like that leaning parent to be like, go and get checked out, go and do this, like your weight is probably not your fault. It was always like, your weight is your fault, so that's your issue.
I mean, I also struggle with, thyroid.
But is that not true? Okay, look. Here is where we can get rid of some of the accountability. When you're a minor, you are primarily taken care of by a parent or guardian, and you are subjected to what they cook for you and what they feed you. And so if they overfeed you and don't give you, the proper food intake mixed with fruits, veggies, carbs, proteins, and just well-portioned meals all around, then yes, they will have a hand in your obesity. But there will come a time in your life where that obesity becomes a choice, when you are free to make your own decisions and when you have your own agency and you are a living, breathing, functional human being in society. Again, everything she's described up until this point seems like a choice outside of her being a minor.
Thyroid and my own blood issues. I'm not quite sure, but I do see an endocrinologist and I go see a doctor. It's a choice to do the requisite steps. It's a choice to go grocery shopping instead of going to fast food when it's easy. It's a choice when you're grocery shopping to go to the outer aisles and not go into the bread section and not go into the junk food section. These are all choices.
As a disabled woman, I can't do a lot of the things that people say, calories in, calories out, oh, you gotta go work out and exert it. A lot of the things that are typical, oh, this is how you lose weight, put me in the hospital. I have to navigate weight differently. I have to look at it differently. My weight is the way it is because of medication, because doctors put me in this position. And I had to learn, okay, am I going to be so hateful of my own body that I am going to backlash and put myself through extreme gym nights, through keeping myself from eating things that I should be able to eat. You should be able to have a balance. You should be able to go into the junk food aisle like other skinny people do and still not have to worry about gaining 20 pounds.
But I don't think skinny people go into this junk food aisle.
They
I think
certainly do.
Yes, they do.
I eat a lot of junk food.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of junk
Yeah.
I mean, my DoorDash would tell you otherwise.
There's a thing called set points. There's a ton of research on it, that your body likes to be at specific weights. It likes to be in a specific way. So if you are fighting yourself to lose weight by not eating, over exercising, and you are damn near killing yourself to be at a specific weight, your body's unhappy.
It's important to note that a choice can be harder for people to make due to conditions in their life.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's still a choice. I could say that I had
Thank
food
you.
addiction. I looked to food when I was stressed and this and that and this. And so it's harder for me to choose it than for someone who has the perfect lifestyle, someone who has parents who are giving them this and that and this. But I definitely still acknowledge that it was my choice. At the end of the day, when I go there and I look and I see, should I order a second hamburger? I'm the one choosing whether or not I order that second hamburger. I'm the one making that choice.
Thank you. And just speaking on the woman that had the disability, look, there are some very extreme circumstances where your weight may not be easily controlled. I think any reasonable person, any rational person could admit that. But for any regular person, any average, everyday Jane or Joe in society, they do not have a disability that's preventing them from losing weight and getting to their targeted results.
I would rather be skinny than fat. Can the agreeers please step forward?
Oh, come on, man. Everybody should be sitting down. It's healthier.
There's a lot of different struggles when it comes to being a
Where'd
bit
she come
bigger. And I have a sister that is very, she's 400 pounds and she struggles a lot. She has lymphedema, and to shower is really, really hard. So I do think for like an overall happy life and like zero struggle, I think I'd rather be skinny.
I think that it is common in society to want to be skinny. I think the average person typically wants to be skinny. I'm actually surprised that I didn't see more people come forward on that question. People treat you
So
better.
am I.
It is what is considered the standard of beauty. Your life expectancy is longer. You tend to be healthier.
I'm also really tall. I'm 6'6", so I kind of wish I could just pick a single struggle, because finding the clothes and things like that when you're bigger both ways can make it really hard. So if I was skinnier, at least that's one less thing I have to worry about. But also, I've got 2 kids and a wife, and I'm taking care of them. And as you pointed out, I definitely think that I'm at less health risks if I'm a skinnier person, if I'm a healthier person in that capacity. And I would much rather be that so that I could be around for my kids longer.
Can the disagreeers please step
I like
forward?
this guy.
I'm speaking as someone who actually was a former smaller person, and I had the
A
most body
former
insecurities
smaller
when I was small.
person.
I was constantly living in fear of gaining weight and having people tell me, oh, don't gain weight, don't do this, make sure that your weight is the same. And once I finally gained weight, I realized that, first off, life wasn't over. I didn't feel any need to not engage in life the previous way that I had, and the attention that I got was different. But even as a smaller person, you get negative attention. And rather than trying to control my body to avoid that negative attention, I would prefer to address the situation as a society, make it more accessible for everybody to where we aren't feeling like I have to be a certain way that's normal in order to be treated like a human being and respected.
If I could
See, this is where I get pissed off. It's not my job to make you feel better about yourself. Sure, that would be the kind thing to do if you and I had an intimate relationship, but I'm also not going to hold the general public responsible for how I feel about myself. And let's backtrack. You were the one that sat down and said that being fat wasn't a choice, and that you have a medical condition that makes it difficult for you to be skinny. Now you come and sit down and say you'd rather be fat than skinny. Are we suffering from recency bias and a whole lot of cope? Because all of a sudden now, you were worse when you were skinny. You had way more insecurities when you were skinnier. And life is far more beautiful now that you're bigger and you can't seem to manage your weight because you're on medication. I don't know. I'm hearing a whole bunch of bullshit right now, and it's pissing me off.
I could counter, because I was a bit bigger when I was younger, and that's when I was the most insecure. I would look in the mirror. I did have family members that were skinny, but then I had a family member that was much bigger, and just the way that I perceived myself, I hated it, and I even became anorexic to like not be big.
I don't think skinny always equates to being healthy.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I am fairly skinny. I'm 6'5". I'm 140 pounds less.
Hang on. I gotta cut you off, Mr. Parker. I hate this argument because it's such a cheap argument. So to make it more acceptable for people to be fat, we invented the argument that being skinny doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy. What that argument doesn't do is satisfy the overall general proof that if a person is skinnier, they are more than likely to be healthier than an obese person. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the way that that argument is framed is only framed to make other people feel bad about you and your poor life choices.
It's the last time I checked, and I'm severely underweight, and I know about this on a day-to-day basis. That being said, I don't know where I'd want to lean at an appropriate weight level, but I think it's important to understand for some skinny people, we're not living a great life by any means. And sometimes I feel like that's always kind of lost in translation when they see someone who's really skinny.
I guess it depends on what you mean when you think of the term skinny. Are you thinking of just like an average weight person, or are you thinking of how you are now?
I'm the average weight for like women in America.
Yeah,
So if we're talking about
But that does not mean that you are not obese. Just because we've reached a new average, aka a new normal, does not mean it's okay. There were plenty of things in society that were deemed as normal, but they were highly unethical, and the global populace would agree that in today's world, if they still existed, they would not be okay. Let's not get that twisted.
talking about an average, like I'm gonna be the closest. If your biggest priority is to be in a smaller body, you need to reassess your priorities.
Yeah, not focused on health.
Yeah.
And the immediate tie between skinniness and health, like you emphasized, there is such a gap between, one, the research, because the research has a huge fat-phobic bias in it, and there has been research that shows that they aren't, even especially during, let's say, COVID and the correlation between obesity. They rushed through those studies so fast because in society's mind, oh, of course a fat person is going to equal someone who's going to get sick faster. Is going
So did they just start researching obesity in 2020? There has never been research done before 2020, ever. So we didn't know before 2020 that being obese was unhealthy. We didn't know that America was one of the most obese countries on the entire planet. We didn't know that we have a problem with diabetes in this country. We didn't know that we had a problem with heart disease and that weight contributes to that before 2020. We didn't know all of these things before 2020. And again, these are the arguments that I don't like, right? Because the moment you say something that people don't like, they make a claim about you that puts you in a category that makes it impossible for you to survive the label. Here's what I mean by that. By calling someone fat phobic, by definition, they are bigoted. They actively show discrimination against a specific group of people, aka fat people. Therefore, that person's opinion and or their beliefs can always be disregarded because they are a fat phobic person and they should never be taken seriously. That's the problem with labels, is that they stop true discourse and they fuck with society. She needs to get the fuck off the stage.
I was going to say it's sick easier. It was an easy jump. So they didn't do all of the testing that they were supposed to do. They didn't check their bias.
So
They
if
didn't
by
check.
saying the study is biased, you're saying that the study didn't account for the variable that obesity may also take a factor into. It's just that there's so many variables in humanity that these pharmaceutical companies could only account for so many during their trials. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're biased. However, you want to talk about bias in studies, actually recently we've been doing the opposite. So for instance, a lot of our studies have been based on BMI. And so we've been showing that, oh, fat people aren't necessarily extremely unhealthy if we look at people with a certain BMI. However, bodybuilders also have a really high BMI, and so they get counted into that category. And so it wasn't until very recently that they equated for that mistake, and it shows, oh my goodness, being fat is actually extremely unhealthy, like way
Exactly.
more unhealthy than we ever realized.
You can't gauge health by looking at somebody.
Yeah.
Like none of my health
Yes,
issues
you can.
precipitated my weight gain. But I always get assumed, oh, don't you want to be skinny so that you don't have a cane anymore and you don't feel the way you feel? And it's like, no, because I have lupus and I'm always going to feel like this.
gonna happen
Like
no
I have
matter
CRPS. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to continue.
America has an obesity problem.
Can everybody please agree on something?
Oh, absolutely, you can. I think it's pretty clear. You look at the weight of the average American, you see how obesity has affected not just children. I mean, the fact that we have more younger and younger people who are looking heavier and heavier, and you see that, like, you know, the way that weight affects us as a society, and you compare that to how we were in the past. Now, not that we should always, you know, we shouldn't compare ourselves to the era of the Great Depression when people just couldn't find food, of course, but people are heavier now in an unhealthy way, and people are eating unhealthy. They are eating it through unhealthy access to food. They're eating diets high in seed oils. They're eating high in corn syrup. They're doing all this kind of stuff that's not good for them that we didn't used to do, and it's bad. It's not a good thing. It's an epidemic. It needs to be quashed in some capacity.
There's so much access to just
Junk food.
anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's so crazy these days. And, you know, I'm so surprised that we're actually supporting a lot of this, you know, and there's always people like, you know, like, it's fine that we have like 3 McDonald's like on the same street. And it's just like, we don't think that this is adding to the problem.
What I think is really sad about that is so many people in America just see the profit in it. I don't want to say I know that these people know the problem, but it's like, how can you not see the problem? They have to see it and just not care. They have to just be like, well, we're gaining profit. Do you see how much this McDonald's is making? Put another one across the street. Like, that's just like
It's not
how it
even
is.
just the corporations, it's the
Yeah.
medical industry. Having a fat country makes us money.
It doesn't help that our cities aren't walkable either.
Yeah,
America is a country of non-walkable cities.
That is why I wavered a little bit, because I think we have a problem with how to treat obesity. I think we have a problem with how to make it so that it is not an epidemic. This is a systemic thing, that we are in a society and in an environment that breeds this. And we are doing it to ourselves, we are doing it to our children, and our corporations and our industries are doing it to us, and they aren't having to take responsibility for it.
All of you who did not sit for the first question, you're contradicting yourself now, because this is a question about choice. Each and every person that's spoken so far has spoken about choices. Yes, we have a lot of resources in this country, and we do have a problem with obesity in this country, but that's largely due to an overindulgence of our food intake. Everybody's making a choice. The companies are making choices because of our preferences. If people didn't want fatty foods and sugary foods, companies would not produce it. Do you think these corporations are in the business of not making money? They're going to produce what people want. And people are actively making the choice to eat this way and to be unhealthy. And each and every person that didn't sit down for the first question is sitting down for this question and can acknowledge that it is a choice and that we are doing it to ourselves. See, the problem is not that being fat is a choice. I mean, that's obvious. It is a choice. The problem is that no one wants to be told that it's their fault.
And they're encouraging it with media. So
And the mukbangs, I was literally gonna bring that up, the mukbangs and like all those videos that just come up to trends for people
not
to do
only
it as
the
well.
mukbangs, but also like Lizzo and other big like media people.
I'm sorry. There's a big difference between the people who are telling people go out and get fat versus a
I love
Lizzo
myself
who's saying
fat.
accept me
Yeah.
the way I am.
She's not just saying accept me the way I am. She's dressing extremely scantily clad and then saying if you
Yup.
don't think that it's normal for a morbidly obese person to be wearing a G-string in the middle of public, then you're the problem. And
Yo, this girl been spitting facts the whole episode, man. Facts. Facts.
and they're trying to normalize society to this obese culture, which is extremely unhealthy. And
What is an obese culture?
a culture which
If you literally sat down and agreed with the statement that America has an obesity problem, you don't then get to turn around and say, well, what exactly is obesity? You don't get to Plato and Socrates this shit. You know what it is, and you know what choices you've made. Stop with the dodging of accountability here.
like normalizes
I'm obese
obesity.
and I haven't even heard that.
Well, obesity is already normal, so
It's. Well, I don't think it should be normalized, and it wasn't normal
But
just a couple
what's the
decades
difference
ago.
between a obese person, myself, walking around in a G-string or a bathing suit, as I do almost every day, and a skinny person? Like, is it okay that the skinny person is doing that?
Yes, you are not appealing to look at. And this is the problem. We are afraid to tell people these things. We allow people to believe that obesity and being fit and skinny are the same thing when they are not. I never want to see you in a G-string. I never want to see it. ever.
I don't think so, but
I don't think
that's for other reasons.
I get the whole in public thing.
to say that when Lizzo does it is the same as a Victoria's Secret angel
Why
is just not
shouldn't
the
it be,
same.
though?
Yeah, what's the
'Cause
difference?
what do you mean? Are you telling me they look? You're telling me it doesn't.
I'm not saying they look the same.
Well,
but
I
I'm
mean,
saying
Lizzo
what's
goes on
different
What's the
stage.
implication? So if I walk down the street, I'm a runway model. I'm a print and runway model. I have walked down a runway in a thong. So me doing that is shameful, but a skinny model is
like a
okay.
Victoria's Secret
I didn't.
It's not shameful. It's not shameful. It's not beautiful is the problem. But you guys want to bully your way in to circles of beauty that women have actually worked very hard for. They work out, they go on diets, their body is their career. And you don't just get to waltz in all willy-nilly and just say, you're the same as them. That's not how it works. No, that's not how it works. You say you have a disability. Okay, great. Well, if I fall down the stairs today, I guess I have a disability too, and that entitles me to disability benefits. How about that? And if everyone else does it, it takes away from your benefits too, because there's not going to be enough to go around. And only then will you see a problem with it. Because you're the one with a real disability, and I'm the one that doesn't have it at all.
And I don't know if I use the phrase shameful,
Problematic.
but I don't think that we as a society should be modeling obesity.
But I'm not modeling obesity. I'm modeling the lingerie that obese people need to be able to have availability to buy.
Yeah. So they've always had the ability to buy
we have not.
lingerie.
If you go to Torrid,
No,
a single
we
underwear is
not.
like almost $20.
Yeah.
And you go to like any other Walmart, any Target, and like all these underwears are on special for like $5 to like $20 and stuff.
Well, it
and
does
it's
take
like
more fabric to make it.
It does take more fabric to
They
make
use
it.
Thank
that as an
you.
excuse, but
That
you
would-
make yards of fabric
Yeah.
for gowns. You, like,
Is a
it's-
small
it's-
a different price than an extra large or a large?
It is.
And
yeah,
we're willing-
for 3XL shirts, I got to pay more money.
I think people view models and Instagram people and all of us who are plus size and proud as we're pushing this obese lifestyle.
Yes.
No, I'm pushing.
But what else are you doing? You're telling people to accept me as I am, as an obese person, and give me all the same benefits as a person who's worked hard for their body. That is unacceptable. No, I'm not going to stand for it. And my good girl over here in the red hasn't stood for it the entire episode.
The fact that this is what I live in, this is my life, and I need other people who feel this way to say, hey, I want to be able to wear clothes that look cute too.
I do think there's a problem with obesity in America, but I think it's a first world country
I'd be forgetting
problem
she
because
exists.
it's spread across the globe. And also, I don't see it as a problem. I do feel like health-wise, people should try to be healthier, but there's no perfect body. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect size. And there's people who are underweight. There's a lot of them. And then there's a lot of people who are overweight. So I really don't see it as like a problem. But just to touch on what you were saying, because I am in the fashion industry, I wanted to become a fashion designer. My dad was one. And they buy 10 rolls of fabric for one price. So it really doesn't cost that much to make underwear.
Sure, but don't you also have to worry about distribution? I mean, if the average person is, let's say, in between small, medium, large, and you're sending clothes out for those, you know you could send out 10,000 of this, 10,000 of that, 10,000 of that. You can't always send out 10,000 3XLs because you're not going to have that many people fitting in the 3XL.
No, because there's somebody who works in marketing and they research that area. There's a census. So we have a database of what type of people are there. Now, we don't know who's going in there, but we know the type of people that live in that area and the type of the people that come and visit the area. So that person is doing their job accordingly, and usually large sizes are sold out.
Okay.
Okay, let me touch on two things. The last thing she said is large sizes are sold out. Duh, America has an obesity problem. Okay. Also, they may buy fabric for one price because they have a preferred rate with a dealer, but it does not mean that they don't use more fabric on those people. So The more people become obese, the less fabric there is available to make shirts or clothes, which means the more they have to purchase from their suppliers. It's simple mathematics. You're literally wrong about this, and you work in the industry.
Okay, so somebody brought up the food desert earlier. I can't even think of an area that would have a so-called food desert.
Fat shaming is worse than skinny shaming.
Fat shaming is worse than skinny shaming.
So I do agree that fat shaming is worse than skinny shaming. Just overall, entirely, the way that people like comment on people's weight compared to somebody skinny, they usually don't comment on somebody skinny.
Yeah.
They don't think there's something wrong with them. They don't, like, they'll maybe say like, oh, you're very thin, do you want to eat a cheeseburger? But that's not as bad as telling somebody, you eat 10, stop. And you don't even know that they're eating 10.
Fat shaming is a systemic problem. You're not gonna not get a job because you're too skinny. Skinny bodies are praised in our society, whereas fat bodies, like, I don't get it as often as other people, but I get a lot of comments on my Instagram that are saying like, you're really beautiful, but you would look a lot better if you lost 50, 60 pounds.
I think she actually would.
Something that I always get a lot of comments on is my masculinity as a man because of how skinny I am. It's always something that I've always kind of dealt with. My favorite comment is always, I look like a sickly, ill Victorian child. And
That's horrible.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
no, I don't, it doesn't bother me as much, but this idea
He
that
actually
skinny
does,
people
though.
can't
Oh
also
my God.
get these kind of comments are just kind of mind-blowing. That doesn't mean that they're, that one side is getting it worse than the other. I think that there are both sides getting.
Look, I think this is a really stupid question. I mean, is fat shaming worse than skinny shaming? Fat shaming is far more common than skinny shaming. However, the reason fat shaming became more common is because you have an extreme push for obesity acceptance in our culture. We just had a conversation about the difference between a obese runway model and a skinny runway model. The fact that that's even a conversation in terms of equality, in terms of them being equal, is truly absurd. And so I don't think either one of these are worse than the other. It's just a standard form of bullying. I mean, clearly one is more common than the other, but I don't have a stance on the issue. And I'm moving on to the next topic.
The body positivity movement promotes childhood obesity.
Let me weigh in on this real quick. The body positivity movement promotes childhood obesity. I'm actually going to say that it doesn't. What promotes childhood obesity are the parents, and they map out the diet plans for their children. And so I don't believe that there are children out there that are saying, I am overweight and I'm happy and you should accept me the way that I am. In fact, I'm not even a fan of pushing adult agendas onto children. Sure, are there children that get bullied for their weight? Absolutely, but they're being bullied by other children. But in the same token, there are other children that are getting bullied for being skinny. There are children that are bullied for wearing a certain brand of shoes or shirts or clothes altogether. Kids get bullied all around. And so I'm not a fan of making adult problems children's problems. And I don't agree that the body positivity movement is negatively impacting children. I blame it all on parents and guardians.
Diet culture has positive effects.
Diet culture has positive effects. I think that's true, but I'm going to say that's true with an asterisk, because the gentleman to the right said that he skips meals, and that's not healthy for anyone. Someone trying to lose weight and someone that's already at their target weight. And so dieting is good and it does have positive effects, but it should be paired with a decent amount of exercise.
I guess for me, diet culture is an important thing to have for people in the world. What I've realized after we're about to finish this up is there wasn't a lot of talk on skinny culture or like skinny people as a whole. Maybe that's because of how the prompt is. But I think it's important if we're gonna give positivity to kids who are obese, I think it's important to give them the options to, say if they wanna lose weight, they can. And I don't see a problem with that in any real sense.
Want healthier relationships, healthier gatherings, healthier workouts? Stay up to date on your
I think that diet culture is a reason that a lot of people struggle with weight problems in the first place. I have even struggled with my own weight issues in the past, and I was like struggling kind of with depriving myself too much because I had a trainer, and then I started binge eating. And as soon as I had like a mental break where I was like physically incapable of stopping myself from putting food in my mouth, I immediately went to see a doctor, and that doctor told me to read a book called Intuitive Eating, and it wildly changed my life. And it was about getting past diet culture and about how so many people ruin their lives with diet culture. And you see it with like somebody talked about eating grapes and lettuce, and it's grapes and lettuce, and it's just like it's this extreme, and so you go from one extreme and then you break, and then you go to the other extreme, and so like I was in my extreme, I broke, so that's why I'm anti-diet culture.
Yeah, I tried keto for a while. And that's the thing about what I realized is like that fad diet kind of stuff. And yeah, did I lose weight? I absolutely lost weight, sure. I didn't keep it off. And the reason I didn't keep it off is because diet culture is about turning the word diet from your overall eating into an activity that takes place over a period of time. A diet should not be something you do from January until May of next year. Diet is what you continually eat, is what you continually put into yourself. Yeah.
Lifestyle change.
Yeah, so my issue with diet culture is this idea of like, oh, I've got this perfect solution for you, man. All you got to do is this, 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 and this, and that. And it's like, no. Like the reality is like, yeah, there are good, correct, and objective ways, I think, for a lot of people to eat. And yes, everybody has to have some variations here and there. There's no one bag fix all, and diet culture is so much about trying to say like, all you got to do is just eat cheese puffs every day for the rest of your life. And
it's easy.
Yeah. And so that's why I think diet culture doesn't help.
That was incredibly infuriating to watch, but I was happy to see that there were some rational people there. Do we have a problem with obesity in this country? Yes, but coupled with that idea, we have to acknowledge the fact that being fat is a choice. What I will not do is sit around and agree with this idea that being fat is not a choice and that there isn't an issue with the body positivity movement, because there is. I should not be shamed because I disagree with the fact that a obese person isn't the same as a skinny person in a bikini or Victoria's Secret lingerie. There is a clear difference in how you look, and that will determine what people think of you, especially when it comes to beauty. But is being fat a choice? Hell fucking yes. But that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed the reaction. If you did, please let me know what you liked best in the comments, and if you really do think that being fat is a choice. Stay tuned for more reactions and subscribe for the channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one.